Almost caught it at the 11, but now he pitches it to Mo Williams.
The NFL is easily the most popular sport in the United States. But the recent kneeling controversy is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to scandals. Despite being a nearly $10 billion a year business,
What I call them? Fun coupons. See that?
the NFL really doesn't have a game plan when it comes to a lot of the scandals it finds itself in, as they appear to respond more reactively than proactively. So let's take a look at the top 10 off-the-field scandals that have rocked the NFL over the years.
Went down in the offseason.
Didn't I just tell you don't ask me that?
Yeah, but
You out the conclusion. Turn around, go back that way. Bye.
Rae Carruth. This one is sad. Carruth, who was a wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers in the late 90s and early 2000s, was casually dating a real estate agent in Charlotte, North Carolina. That real estate agent was named Sharika Adams, and she ended up getting pregnant with Carruth's baby. But when Adams was 8 months pregnant, Carruth hired nightclub owner Van Brett Watkins Sr. to murder Adams and her unborn child, so Carruth could avoid paying child support. Adams called 911 and explained to them that Carruth was driving in front of her car and basically slowed down to box her in, which allowed Watkins Sr. to pull up alongside her car to shoot her. Adams survived the original barrage of bullets long enough to make that call, although she fell into a coma soon after arriving at the hospital. Her child was delivered via C-section and did survive, but Adams ended up passing away. Carruth fled, but was eventually caught inside the trunk of his car outside a motel in Parker's Crossroads near West Tennessee. He was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, using an instrument to destroy an unborn child, and shooting into an occupied vehicle, and received 18 to 24 years in prison. O.J. Simpson.
Whoa. Anyone who wants a piece of OJ has to get by me.
There's no larger off-the-field NFL scandal than the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. Nicole Brown Simpson met O.J. Simpson, the legendary NFL running back who was also a movie star, in 1977 while she was working at a private club in Beverly Hills that Simpson frequented. After starting an affair with Simpson, who was married at the age of 18, Simpson ended up getting a divorce in 1979, and Simpson and Brown married in 1985. They were married for 7 years and had 2 children, and they had a rocky marriage that was full of domestic violence both during and after the marriage ended in 1992. On June 13, 1994, Brown, Simpson, and Goldman were found savagely murdered outside of Brown Simpson's home in the Brentwood area of Los Angeles.
And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. And I said, well, you think you can kick my ass?
They were murdered at least 2 hours before they were discovered by the police, with the only initial evidence being a single bloody glove lying next to the bodies. When police went to O.J. Simpson's home to inform him that his ex-wife had been murdered, they noticed blood that was scattered all over his white Ford Bronco. Simpson's fame turned to infamy when he used that Bronco to lead police on a slow-speed chase as O.J. held a gun to his head and threatened to kill himself. The trial was broadcast live on television and divided the country mostly along racial lines, as the trial came not too long after the riots in Los Angeles in 1992. The trial was also the first major trial to utilize DNA as part of the state's case, and despite all of the evidence that O.J. was involved in the deaths of both Simpson and Goldman, the jury found Simpson not guilty. Aaron Hernandez.
I felt pretty good. It was good to be back out there and help the team.
Former New England Patriot tight end Aaron Hernandez was living the dream as part of the best 1-2 tight end punch in the history of the league. In what really should have been a much larger story, Hernandez actually killed at least one person and potentially a couple more while he was playing in the league. Hernandez ended up committing suicide in April 2017 while serving a life sentence in prison for the murder of Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro linebacker who he was friends with. Lloyd was shot and killed on June 17, 2013 in an industrial park about 1 mile from Hernandez's home. The theory is that Hernandez became paranoid that Lloyd was going to snitch on him, as Lloyd became aware of the fact that Hernandez had murdered 2 other men outside of a nightclub in Boston in 2012. Hernandez was found guilty of the death of Lloyd, but was tried and found not guilty of the 2012 double homicide.
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
Madam Foreperson, by which theory or theories deliberate premeditation
Days after that decision, Hernandez was found dead in his cell with John 3:16 written on his forehead. He was 27 and had hung himself with his bedsheets. Spygate. Spygate is the nickname for the 2007 videotaping controversy surrounding the New England Patriots during that season. The Patriots were caught videotaping the signals of the defensive coaches of the Patriots' rivals, the New York Jets. While it sounds a lot worse than it was in reality, it wasn't actually illegal to videotape the opposing team's coaches. So the actual reason that the Patriots were busted was basically that they didn't film in the areas that the league had designated. Because the Pats were videotaping the Jets coaches from their sideline during the game, it was determined by the semi-new NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell that the Patriots had violated league rules, calling the videotaping a calculated and deliberate attempt to avoid long-standing rules designed to encourage fair play and promote honest competition on the playing field. Because the Patriots are the winningest franchise of the 21st century, people jumped on this ruling like crazy and use it to basically attempt to nullify all of the Patriots' success by claiming that they were cheaters. Beyond that gigantic PR hit, the Patriots were also punished by the league. Their head coach Bill Belichick was fined the maximum amount allowed by the league, which was $500,000, and also the largest fine in the 87-year history of the NFL. The team itself was also fined $250,000 and also lost its first-round pick in the next year's draft. Deflategate.
Really, till Monday morning, I had no idea what happened with the balls.
If Spygate made people believe that the Patriots were cheaters, then Deflategate ended up making people know that the Patriots were cheaters. Although this was a large scandal, it was also slightly misunderstood, just like Spygate. After the NFL ruled that the Patriots also had to turn over all of their videotapes, the league ended up destroying the tapes by smashing them by the order of Goodell, which added to the idea that the league was essentially in cahoots with the Patriots because their success was good for ratings. Because of that move, then U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania Arlen Specter requested a meeting with Goodell. Specter let the public know that Goodell had said that the Patriots had been essentially filming other teams illicitly since they hired head coach Bill Belichick back in 2000. A little less than a year after that, the Boston Herald reported that the Pats had also filmed the St. Louis Rams walkthrough practice before Super Bowl 36 back in 2002. Either way, this is still part of the Pats' reputation, as the Eagles actually staged a fake practice walkthrough in the hopes that the Patriots would spy on the practice and get the wrong plays. Before we continue with our next gate, how about hitting that subscribe button and notification bell, but make sure you never miss a video again. Bullygate.
It's changed several people's lives. It may have changed the culture inside NFL locker rooms, but take me inside that day.
If you haven't noticed yet, there are a lot of gate scandals in the NFL, and most of those gates were things that most people couldn't relate to, as they did tend to involve football in some way. Bullygate, however, was a scandal that most people could relate to, as it involved the supposed bullying of player Jonathan Martin to the point that Martin left not only the team, but the sport as a whole. The alleged bully was Richie Incognito, who played the same position as Martin and had reportedly sent racially charged and threatening text and voice messages to Martin. It was reported early on that Martin wasn't the only victim of Incognito, and that some of his teammates were afraid of him. Incognito ended up being suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. The team then cut him after it was reported that he had left a voicemail calling the mixed-race Martin a half N-word piece of shit. It turned out that Incognito had been tasked by the Dolphins to toughen up Martin, and that he was simply trying to do so in the stupidest way possible. Martin never played for the NFL again, whereas Incognito went to treatment and therapy and ended up getting picked up by a few different teams in the NFL.
I've been a cancer in locker rooms in my past. I have been
Bountygate. This is the last gate, we promise. This scandal does involve on-the-field actions more so than the others on this list, but because the directives for this scandal happened off the field, it still makes the video. Bountygate refers to the New Orleans Saints defense towards the end of the last decade, a unit that was coached by Greg Williams, who had essentially rewarded players financially for hurting the players on opposing teams. There's actual audio of Williams discussing a specific player on an upcoming opposing team that was recovering from an injury to his knee.
Him running sideways. We want his head sideways.
As the Saints were filming a documentary about how football was so important to the people of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. In the audio, Williams informs his players to hit that player's knee to knock him out of the game. Something that's beyond awful in a league where players' careers can end on any play, even without people targeting specific areas of their bodies.
All right, and nobody's blocking.
Bountygate reached its apex in the NFC Championship game during the 2009 season, a game in which the Saints repeatedly hit opposing quarterback Brett Favre of the Minnesota Vikings, injuring his ankle to the point that he couldn't even participate in drills for months. Once the league caught on, they did what they always do, which is respond reactively instead of proactively. The largest problem is that the Saints ended up winning the Super Bowl, and while the league couldn't take that away from them, they did end up suspending the Saints coaches. Williams was suspended indefinitely while the head coach Sean Payton was suspended for a full season. It didn't matter though. They still had their stolen Super Bowl championship, while Brett Favre and the Vikings missed their window of opportunity, and the people of Minnesota got frostbite from their tears freezing on their faces. Adrian Peterson child abuse. Speaking of the Minnesota Vikings and tears, one of the players that ended up missing out on that Super Bowl was running back Adrian Peterson. Peterson is the father of enough children to field his own football team, and the running back that was known for punishing the defenders who had to tackle him was also apparently punishing his children that same way. Peterson played in the first game of the 2014 season and ran for 75 yards, and then ended the entire season with 75 yards, as he was suspended for the entire season after he was indicted for child abuse in his home state of Texas. Peterson reportedly had used a switch on his son, and he hit him so hard that his ex-girlfriend had to bring the child to the doctor, who alerted the police after seeing the aftermath that included cuts on the child's backside, legs, and genitals. As stated in the previous entry, the league reacted the way the league always does, and initially didn't suspend Peterson, and the Vikings also reinstated Peterson after he was deactivated for the second game of the season. Because of the uproar from the public, the NFL decided to place Peterson on the NFL's exempt commissioner's permission list, which led the Vikings to suspend Peterson without pay for the entirety of the rest of the season. So it probably shouldn't surprise people that Peterson already seems to be broke and he isn't even retired yet. Peterson returned from that suspension and led the league in rushing in 2015, but it's something that will definitely follow him for the rest of his life.
Peterson, so how's it going today?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, been ripping and running all day, but I made it up here and got some great gifts.
Ray Rice. Had Peterson's situation happened in 2013, he probably would have only missed a game or two. But it happened right after this entry, when the eye of outrage was directed at the NFL and its apparent protection of generally terrible men. The most terrible of those men has to be Ray Rice, who literally one-punched his fiancée in an elevator after she spit on him. She was knocked out after she fell and also hit her head on the handrail in the elevator, and the highly intoxicated Rice dragged his fiancée out of the elevator and into the lobby, showing little to no remorse or concern for her well-being. Rice was indicted on assault charges, and he was originally suspended for the first 2 games of the 2014 season, but after the video of the assault was released, people basically had had enough with the bad behavior from players in the NFL. The league yet again reacted reactively, attempting to change its rules after the fact, which in the legal world is called an ex post facto situation, which means that you can't really change or create a new rule and then punish those who didn't adhere to the rule before it existed. So when the NFL suspended Rice indefinitely, he ended up suing the league and they ended up settling with Rice, who has never played again, but at least is still with his fiancée turned wife. I'm a little surprised that no one threw a penalty flag when the priest at their wedding asked if anyone in the crowd had any reason why these two shouldn't be wed. Michael Vick. Recently, Kirk Cousins joined the Minnesota Vikings with the largest guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL. But there was a time where Michael Vick was the highest paid QB in the league, as a player who revolutionized the quarterback position as one of the fastest runners at the position ever. While he had a weird throwing motion and wasn't the most accurate passer, he was also an efficient enough passer to warrant the contract that he received from the Atlanta Falcons. However, one of the largest problems that some players in the NFL have stem from the fact that they don't separate themselves from some of their friends from their neighborhood and childhood. Aaron Hernandez is a perfect example of that, as he grew up near Boston, and when he was drafted by the Patriots, he ended up being stuck with the people he grew up with. In Vick's case, it was his family that ended up sinking him, as his cousin used Vick's money to start a dogfighting operation, something that Vick was more than just financially involved in, as it was reported that Vick actually killed multiple dogs himself by drowning them by sticking their heads in buckets full of water. Vick ended up going to prison and having to return a lot of the money he received from Atlanta. However, he emerged from prison and got a second chance in the league and ended up playing for the New York Jets. He'd clearly lost the speed that made him the best Madden QB ever, but he did play for long enough to earn enough money to retire.
Whatever you can recall, and I know you're a smart guy, so I know you can get this. Okay.
There's no scandal in liking our page for more great content. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.